Followed then by Pildapper, Lawhawk flashed home. Then Tassie Downs, pin number Gilmore, followed by Paddy's Secret. Master Monty.
There's the unofficial winner, number 5, Boucher Boy, and I believe Raver Kevin Sattler hinted at that the horse would have a fair chance.
He did indeed. He mentioned that he's trained down at Victor Harbour by a school teacher. Obviously, he's been sneaking out at lunchtime to give the horse plenty of work because he finished on strongly. There's a fair bit of bumping in the straight, though. Jadake Boy inconvenienced the two on the inside, Pildapper and Bold Rani.
Well, at this stage, the unofficial placings appear to be 5, 7 and 3. So that is Boucher Boy, Jadaki Boy, and then Higher Moore in third placing. And it was a pretty good run. Let's have a look at it, Ray, and see what you can pick up as they come down the straight.
You'll see this winner come right down the extreme outside when we pick up the replay, Boucher Boy. He joined in just behind the leading bunch as they turned the corner. We had Jadake Boy go up on the outside of Bold Rani in challenge. Taking a while to pull his horse up. He wants to go another lap, Kim.
Well, maybe they should have put him in the steeple.
He wants to go another round, but there he is, Boucher Boy. He's only a plain-looking horse, too. He's a chestnut, but there's nothing flash about him. And the Peter Hutchinson, of course, the rider, the son of the international rider, Ron Hutchinson. And he's certainly developing into probably South Australia's best jockey at the present time.
Well, you say he's a plain-looking horse, but that's part of the attraction of racing. It doesn't always matter what a horse looks like. You think of, I think Manikato was bought for $3,500 because it's a rather ugly-looking horse.
Yes, he was probably a bit big and overgrown, had big knees, but this fellow is just a normal, hardy type of gelding. And as you get them over the longer journey, they tend to do look a bit more plain. But it was a good win by Boucher Boy, and he's arrived in time to beat Jadake Boy in high armour.
And on the other horses that didn't quite make the placings?
Well, it's pretty hard to find any excuses for the beaten runners. There you see Boucher Boy coming back. He's a very relaxed horse, just drops his head, and the rider is sitting over his withers. Just bring him back now.
Well, Kevin Sattler's down in the mounting enclosure. Let's hear what he has to say.
Well, here's a happy man that trained the winner, Boucher Boy, of the Financial Country Cup. Now, I've known you since you were a little tacker. I know your mum and dad well and the rest of the family. First win at Agby?
Yes, it's the first winner I've trained here, Kevin. As a matter of fact, it's the first time I had a horse start here.
Is it?
Yeah, I've had a licence for a long time, but only ever had one at a time.
Now, I knew you when you were a youngster, you became a school teacher.
Yes, that's right. Now I work for the Department of TAFE at Noarlunga College.
And so that doesn't interfere with training a horse, or you've only got the one?
I only have the one.
Now, I've always called you Jamie, but they tell me your name is Jake.
Yeah, well, since I was about 10, my brothers and cousins all started to call me Jake, and it's something that stuck.
Is John here today?
I watched the race with Dad. The little horse was 3 and 4 wide most of the way. He's got a lot of guts. I'd almost given up on him, but obviously the horse hadn't, and he kept trying.
Now, did you buy him privately or what, or in the ring or what?
I bought him as a yearling in Sydney. I've had him since he was a baby.
What'd you pay for him?
Boucher Boy, I think $4,500.
You're a pretty bloody good judge, Jake, I can assure you. But your dad was a wonderful trackman, John Kelton. He worked for the News as the trackman at Morfordville. Your mother, Pat, I know well. What are your plans with Boucher Boy? Boucher Boy?
Boucher Boy. There's some chance, Kevin, he might go to Alice Springs for the Alice Springs Cup. I'm considering that at the moment.
Hey, and won't interfere with the tape work?
I won't go. I'll have to...
organise someone to stand in for you.
Organise a stand-in.
Now, your rider, Peter Hutchinson, he's got a good strike rate with you.
Peter's a top jockey. It was a very difficult task for him today because he'd drawn 17. But top jockeys win races, and that's about all there is to it.
Now, is he the only horse you got in work?
He's the only one I've got, yes.
Well, good luck. He's coming back to scale. Go and enjoy the success.
Thanks, Kevin.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much, Kevin. We mentioned about racing, about the different characters that's involved, and to own one horse, that'd be giving him a tremendous buzz.
We've gone from one extreme to the other. The previous race won by Colin Hayes with his multi-million-dollar concern, and there we have the battling one-horse trainer down there at Victor Harbour.
That's tremendous, and there's a pretty happy Peter Hutchinson. There's the official placings from race 5, the Country Cup. Number 5 was Boucher Boy, number 7, Jadaki Boy, and number 3, the favourite, High Moore. And just having a look at the breeding of Boucher Boy, out of Boucher, paid $4,500 for him.
The Boucher came to Australia with a big reputation, but unfortunately he hasn't left the good horses expected, and that's probably why Jake was able to pick him up so cheaply.
Well, just on that fact of looking at breeding, well, we might get back to it a little bit later, and...
Penny work late on on the scene, then Rovetown and Rapido Pango, but Self said it is going to win this easily. It'll get to the line about 3.5 in front of Laughing Cavalier. A neck away third on the inside, Bonsai Star Pennyworth.
It will be a sad day for Australian racing when Colin Sidney Hayes, the champion trainer, hands in his trainer's licence on July 31 to take over the breeding side of Lindsay Park. Oakbank brings back special memories for the Hayes stable because it was here in 1948 that Colin raced his first runner, Surefoot, in the Great Eastern Steeple. In a career which spans more than 40 years, Colin has trained in excess of 5,260 winners in many of the major events throughout Australia. Now, nearing the end of his last year as a trainer, Colin Hayes is preparing to hand over the reins of his horse racing empire to his son David. I had the opportunity to talk to Colin last week at his home in Lindsay Park, set in the rolling hills near Angaston in the Barossa Valley, and I asked him if he had any regrets about his decision to retire.
Oh, well, naturally, Kevin. It's nostalgic memories come flooding in, and I've had it's been my hobby, and if your life's if your hobby's your work, your life goes terribly quickly.
Well, in the time you've been training, Colin, it was 19 officially as a public trainer, was what year?
1950. Yeah.
Well, you've helped to rewrite the record books, not only in stake money won, group races won, the classics, the Melbourne Cups. Have you got any more to achieve?
Ah, well, Kev, I think that from the breeding angle, I'd, you know, hopefully we'll breed those horses to win those races, and it's a continuing interest breeding, and I'll be looking forward to hopefully improve our breeding stock.
Well, you're at one of the happiest times of your life when you've always attended Oakbank, because you started your training career with a horse that you paid £9 for, Surefoot.
Yes, that's
You
right.
wanted to make him a jumper, that right?
Yes, I did, and he ran third to the feline. I think it was in 1948.
That's correct.
Yes, and
In the Great Eastern?
Yes, in the Great Eastern. It was £200 to run third, and believe me, it was well received.
Well, Colin, Oakbank has been a happy hunting ground for you, winning numerous flat races, most of the jumping events, but you've never won the Harry de Young hurdle. Can you win it this year?
Well, we've got a few nice young horses coming on to run in that race, and I'm hoping that perhaps Wolver Action or Terra Nui or one of those horses might just happen to be good enough to run in it. But they'll be experienced enough to run it. Wolver Action will be, of course. He's a last start winner.
Colin, it's been considered in South Australia two of the biggest things we've got going for us as far as tourism, the Grand Prix and Oakbank. Do you agree?
Oh, certainly. Yes, I have to agree with that, Kev. I think Oakbank has got a certain appeal, and I'm sure that there's a carry-on after Oakbank. I think the betting and the crowd, people get interested. It stimulates their interest. Young people go to Oakbank.
Right.
And I think it stimulates them and they carry on from there. And it's a scene that's quite unique in Australia, and it has so much appeal, and it's so well organised from the one-way traffic to the course and one-way traffic home, and I think the committee over the years have done a fantastic job at Oakbank.
What changes would you like to see, if any, for Oakbank over the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I've often wondered whether it's not used enough, whether it would lose any appeal if they had a spring meeting there. I think that it has such appeal that it draws people into the industry.
Cole, in your wonderful training career and the management of Lindsay Park Stud, the training of David Hayes, you brought him along gradually, and you made up your decision to retire after you decided to let David take over. Now, is it the right age to handle such a big empire?
Well, yes, David's been, and you remember this well, David used to follow me around the races as a little boy.
Correct.
And he'd wander into the mounting enclosure with me and even in the steward's room until he was ordered out.
You wanted to know what was going on in there.
Yeah. And the chief stewards of those days, or the stewards of those days, would remember him when he was a little fella, still, you know, just in prep school and things like that. From the age of about 4 on, he did it. And so he's always been vitally interested. He's terribly, as a matter of fact, he was arrested when he was 13, sneaking off from school and having a little bet in the Newmarket Handicap at Victoria Park Racecourse with 2 of his friends in their school uniforms.
Arrested at Victoria Park by a policeman or the racecourse detective?
No, by the
Racecourse detective.
Yes, he said, what are you boys doing here? And he said, well, I'm backing Dad's horse. Always welcome in the Newmarket. Look, Peter knows. So they marched him back to school and he was gated for quite a period.
Was he?
Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit of crime coming out that we didn't know about him. Now, he's taken over the reins very confidently. He knows his breeding side of it. He knows his racing side of it for a young man.
Yes, I think, really he's ready, and he gets a lot of fun out of it. He gets tremendous, he enjoys people, and he's very keen on the job, and he's very energetic, and I feel very optimistic about him that he'll do a great job, and if he needs any counsel, well, I'm in the background, and he knows that, and he's I can't say too much about him, but in answer to your question, I think he's ready.
Well, Cole, you've achieved some wonderful records in training right throughout Australia. You've never won a Harry de Young hurdle. Your love for jumping. Let's hope you pull off the Harry de Young hurdle at Oakbank today.
Thanks, Kev.
Colin Hayes, a real legend in racing. Let's have a look at dividends from race 5 at Oakbank, the Beneficial Finance Country Cup. Official dividends. Number 5 was the winner, Boucher Boy, paid $3.80 and $1.25 for the place, so he was good value. Number 7, Jadaki Boy, came in second, paying $1.20, and number 3, High Arm Moore, paid 95 cents for the place. The Quinella paid $11.20, and the Trifecta paid $59.05. And a man that's been having a bet today is Ken Cunningham, and he is down in the parade ring at the moment.
Back straight, and the barriers will be of no consequence in this. You're going to see a horse called Double Gin in this, a 3-year-old against the older horses, number 2. He's a very, very strong front runner, and he's the one to watch. And there's been 3 scratchings in the race, which reduces the field to 8 starters. And there's a horse there, number 3, Merino Explorer. You could expect that to be coming home rather strongly down the outside. Yes, he's getting ready for the Adelaide Cup, and no doubt he'll use this as a very strong hit-out for that. And something at longer odds, Lap It Up, a good each-way bet. Good honest mare, and will certainly run the distance. Well, your selection? My selection is Double Gin, and I think the only other danger is Merino Explorer. It's one or the other. Well, let's get the view of Kevin Sattler. He's down in the ring again.
Thanks very much, Kimbo. And Cassie, this, while it's only a small field, it's a very, very competitive one. Double Gin, Water Boatman, Merino Explorer. It's a good field.
And the punters behind the 2 horses, Double Gin and Merino Explorer having a battle royal in the ring.
Are they really?
Double Gin is holding favouritism just in front of Merino Explorer, but don't be surprised if they run equal favourite.
Gee, Water Boatman's not a bad price. Cassie at 35 at 10, he won last night, beating Double Gin.
Well, he's got 57.5 kg and he's up and he meets Double Gin on worse terms. But according to the punters and the stable behind the 2, they think it's a match race. But I think a horse with an each-way chance of Shanghai Sky, I thought it's 3rd on Saturday, was a lovely run for this. If you back Merino Explorer, save on Shanghai Sky.
OK, well, I'm going for Lap It Up. We'll come back with race 6 right after the break. Stay with us.
Back on the history of the Old Easter race meeting. The forerunner to the Great Eastern Steeple was staged in these paddocks behind the Great Eastern Hotel on what was then the Great Eastern Highway, a dirt road which was then Adelaide's main link with the east. The same road that took the old-timers to the Great Eastern Gold Rush at Ballarat. And bear in mind that was only 20 years before the first Great Eastern Steeple, which was staged around 1870. Can you imagine it? It probably resulted from a bet in the pub, over fences, fallen trees, and probably over the highway. I'll bet the old pub did well that day. But the Oakbank meeting as we know it was first held in 1876. The Onkaparinga Racing Club was formed in 1875 by the local gentry. Among them was Mr. W. Johnson, who happened to run the local brewery. It's still there as a cool drink factory. This was his home, right at the entrance to the course, and it was his paddocks that were used for the course. He was the first president of the club. The Great Eastern began as a steeplechase over 20 sovereigns, over 8 jumps, 4 feet high, about 2.5 miles, run on Easter Monday in 1876. Well, there were only 4 starters. It was won by the local blacksmith's horse, a grey called Tormentor, ridden by Candy Haslett, whoever he was. Can you imagine Johnson's beer sales that day? The course was laid out by the Sporting Woodside Club, using horses and drays. And their only real snag was a large fallen tree which lay across the track. Well, they jumped a horse over it and decided to leave it there as a jump. I'd like to be able to say it's still there, but it's not. The fallen log rotted away, which is probably the reason it fell in the first place. But that log had become such a part of Oakbank that it was replaced with another. In those early days, the grandstand was a group of brewery wagons with the oxen still hitched. The judge stood on an upturned butter box. It's a good thing there were only 4 horses. Later, the judge was elevated to an old red gum stump. The prize money rose in steps of 100 sovereigns a year. Not a bad prize in those days. In 1898, the Great Eastern was worth £1,000. Horses like Swordfish won with a weight of 12 stone. The course was stretched to 3 1/4 miles, over 21 jumps that only the bravest would tackle. Cross-country jockeys who've ridden overseas say it's one of the toughest races in the world. But old-timers will tell you that Oakbank today is nothing compared with what they had to put up with at the turn of the century. The stone wall and post and rail fences have long been replaced by brush fences. But today's steeple is run at breakneck speed compared to the hunting pace of the old days. But there's hardly a year goes by without some sort of incident. In 1880, there was a riot. It was Rafferty's rules in those days. There was a horse called Gun. Now, it seems that Gun fell at the first fence. He was an outsider, so no one took much notice. They didn't have callers, so he wasn't missed. But when the horses came round for the 3rd time, who do you reckon was in front? Yeah, Gun by a mile, going like a stag, leading the field home. Well, the judge put up Gun's number and the crowd went mad. Gun had spent half the race hiding behind the hedge. He'd only joined the field on the last round. The second horse protested, but it was dismissed by the stewards. If it happened today, they'd get lynched. A couple of years later, the rider of a horse called Glenorchy made a bet that he'd be first past the post. Well, when they came round for the second time, Glenorchy was anything but a moral. So the jockey cut over the rail into the flat, across the course, and rejoined the field with a huge lead. He won by 20 lengths. But the stewards were alert this year. He lost on a protest, but he still won his bet. He was first past the post. Another year, rider Keith Paris was disqualified for holding onto another horse's tail going up the back of the course. The rider in front, cross-country champion Laurie Meenan, couldn't work out why his horse was slowing. It couldn't happen anywhere else but Oakbank.
And we can thank Bob Perry for that tremendous little story. And footage like that, Ray, is just priceless, isn't it?
It certainly is. And fortunately, the police have got better crowd control manoeuvres than they did back then.
They were everywhere, weren't they? And
they were.
Gee, it's funny, you look back at those days, and I suppose the next generation will look back at footage from like this particular Oakbank, and they'll think that we're rather strange in our outfits and outdated. But it's amazing, as generations go by, the tradition of Oakbank just seems to continue and get stronger and stronger.